Ed and I will be talking about is some work that we did at Biohaven. My current executive director is we're both analytic people. We really dove deep into the analytics of coaching at Biohaven. I did a little of this work at BI before I came to Biohaven. And so we really wanted to explore the influence of coaching on performance. Now, I know there's been a lot that has been done to look at coaching and its impact, but in the pharmaceutical industry, and Ed can really speak to this because his company really has been the go-to in terms of coaching analytics for the last 20 years in this industry, but also outside of this industry, as he looks at the level of coaching quality from a written standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. So how does coaching have a significant impact on performance? We know it does, but how do our coaches impact our salespeople? What do they do that's different? How do they coach when they're out in the field? And what do they do that separates themselves? And then what does that impact look like overall? So we really dove deep into looking at what our coaches do, how they coach, how they separate each other from their peers, and how they do that from a not only quality from a written standpoint, but a quality from a day in, day out coaching standpoint. So we dove very deep for 2 years on this work. So we looked at a data-driven approach to coaching, and our coaching impacting performance was basically the question we had for ourselves. So Biohaven at the time was a very small biotech launching its first product and only product against a much bigger competitor in the midst of a global pandemic. We actually launched March 2020. So right in the midst of a global pandemic, when most companies were pulling out of the field, we were still going out in the field launching this new to class product. And we were searching for ways to optimize performance as a very small organization. So we started this research with Echelon that looked, and Biohaven, along with our commercial learning and development program, conducted a really extensive 2-year study and approach on coaching from a field standpoint. What we did, so many things that you guys have probably already done in your companies, but we rode with reps. We asked them questions. We interviewed them. We interviewed the coaches as well. We interviewed the CBDs and our sales VPs as well. We took a deep dive and analysis of coaching documentation with Ed and his company at Echelon, and I'm going to ask him to share some of his feedback there. We did a deep dive into performance data. So from the launch standpoint, all the way to the point where we were just recently acquired by Pfizer, we dove deep into the data to see on a quarter by quarter basis, how were our coaches performing? What were the top coaches doing? Did they correlate with the coaches who were really documenting quality coaching, or were there outliers there? As I said, we interviewed coaches and commercial business directors who are directors. We had 7 of them throughout the country. And then we explored how, when, where, what our coaches did before, during, and after a coaching session. And then we looked at analytics around their way they communicated with their reps as well.
Yeah. So as Todd was saying, we have studied, and Kevin, thanks for the introduction. We have studied coaching now for going on it'll be 17 years next month that we started Echelon. And what we really look at is 2 things, even though they're sort of the 2 sides of the same coin. Number one is, what does great coaching look like and sound like? So when I say that we want to have great coaching in our organization, or we need to improve coaching with regard to our competitors, or we see that as an opportunity for growth, what does that actually mean? Like, what does it mean to have great coaching? Because everybody on this call, I would imagine, agrees that coaching will impact performance, but what exactly about coaching? How do you know what aspects of coaching actually do impact performance? Yeah. And then the flip side of that coin is that when you look at performance, how do you actually elevate performance by, like, where does that bridge exist? What are the improvements in performance? How do you start to gauge growth, whether it's just overall top line revenue, whether it's against KPIs and metrics, whatever it might be? How do you actually start to deconstruct that and build coaching in a way that it will drive performance in that organization?
Yeah, and I think you guys do a great job. I love the basics, and I hope you talk a little bit about that criteria. But one of the things that I talked to Kevin about, and I've talked to Ed consistently around this, is let's help redefine what coaching is. Because what we see coaching as, what I saw coaching as, and I think Sally Peck from Amgen down in Ponte Vedra talked about this on our breakout, was In most cases, people saw coaching as, I'm going to ride in the field, I'm going to observe, and then I'm going to evaluate, and then I'm going to provide some feedback to somebody. It's not going to be really in depth. We're not going to practice. We're not going to share what good looks like. And if you look at the best coaches, right? If we look at the best coaches from a sporting standpoint, or the best coaches that you know of, they really are intentional about what they do. They really share what good looks like. They co-create that with the individual they're coaching, right? They're intentional about the skills and behaviors they're working on. And so what we try to do, not only at Biohaven, but at BI, was really to kind of reframe what coaching was in more of a performance standpoint. And we actually worked with 2 performance psychologists at a company called Amplos. They work closely with the University of Georgia athletic program, mainly with Kirby Smart and their football team. They haven't been too bad over the last couple of years, I don't think. So, and then the University of Clemson, Dabo Sweeney and that team, because what is psychology? It's all about behavior change, right? That's the world they live in. And how do they help athletes, right? And then coaches maximize and optimize performance. And so we felt that was important as well. So we really tried to redefine what coaching was, instead of this observation, evaluation, and slight feedback and tweaking. We really want to get the mindset of, what do the best coaches do? How do they do it? Where do they do it? And how do they build cultures and kind of a culture around a growth mindset to really focus on skills and behaviors? And so what did we find? So after this extensive 2-year analysis on our coaches, we did find that coaches had a significant impact on performance. And what our top coaches did, and Ed can talk a little bit about this, because when I say top coaches, I wish it was all 100% of, at that time, our 71 coaches. And then at BI, we had around 250 coaches. It really was a subset of about 15% of our coaches to 20% of our coaches did these things and separated themselves. And how do we take that middle group and move it into this top group? They coached the skills. They consistently coached the skills on coaching forms, and in their written coaching that Ed and we evaluated, you could see that they were coaching to elevate skills on a consistent basis. They also focused on behaviors consistently. Now, skills, they focused on maybe 1 to 3 skills, never more than that, because any more than that, it's very difficult. And they try to co-create that with their representatives. So there was a balance between what the coach felt they needed and the rep felt what they needed. And then they focused on behaviors, those behaviors that impacted their customer engagements. But they're also very intentional and specific about what they were doing. Their representative knew when they were out in the field with them, they're not just going to take them to the nice lunch and then give them anecdotal feedback. They were really intentional about the skills that they were going to work on and the behaviors they're going to work on, and really share what good looks like. So when they left that representative understood the standard that they were working towards and they were trying to develop towards. So, Ed, I'm going to leave it there and maybe talk a little bit about your work here, and then kind of the work around basics and how that helped pull this through.
Absolutely. So we started to work with the organization right after launch, which was incredibly exciting. But we've had the chance to see the organization grow and evolve, and I'll tie sort of what we did and how we did it to that growth story. Because I think, and we were just talking about this in the breakout that we had, and so much of what I think was a key success factor in all of your work, Todd, was setting expectations.
Yeah.
Right. So in a lot of cases, we can say we want our managers to coach. Our managers have to coach, and that's great, and that's important. But until you really start to put some parameters around that and set very clear, measurable expectations,
yeah,
you're just going to get a lot of chattering, in my opinion. So one of the first things that we did when we started working with Biohaven was really define, okay, what is it when we say effective coaching, right? We want our managers to be effective in their coaching. What does that really mean? Well, there's 4 pieces to that. Number 1 is consistency. How often and under what circumstances does the manager coach? It was during COVID, so there weren't that many options, but really helping managers, if we're going to say, look, we still need you to check in on your people, even though 80 or 90% of them are not even seeing their customers. How do you make the best of it and continue to coach, right? Setting a clear expectation. And then as the restrictions went away, the business was taking off, those expectations change, right? Again, that consistency around how and under what circumstances do you coach.
Yeah.
Second thing that the organization did exceptionally well was When I'm coaching, what do I coach to, right? And it sounds like an absolutely simplistic way to look at it, but what the organization did that I think really drove the success all around was you defined a core set of skills and levels of proficiency within that skill that you knew would drive performance. So you correctly and accurately identified and articulated those skills, which, if there were growth, would directly impact performance. And then to your point, another key point here is you didn't have to coach to all 10, right? As a manager, one of the most important conversations is to have, look, Todd, what are you trying to achieve over the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever that might be? And whatever that is, whatever that measurable impact is that Todd is trying to facilitate, what skills are Todd and I going to be focused on, right? How do I translate that outcome to actual skills that I can see? Because you can't coach to results. You can't coach, Todd and I talk a lot, you can't coach to the scoreboard, right?
Right. Yeah.
The scoreboard reflects everything that happened on the field. And in this case, over the past year. So let's look at what happened. Let's break down the game film from there and talk about the skills that are going to drive performance. Then, and this is really where I think, this was where we started to get it into overdrive. Once we had the consistency and the expectations and we were focused, we really looked at the quality of coaching.
Yeah.
And we talk about quality of coaching as being measurable because over the last 17 years, we've really refined what the qualitative criteria of coaching is. And Todd has referenced it a few times. We use the acronym BASICS, right? High impact, high quality coaching is B, it's balanced, right? I'm balancing what I see today with the growth that I want to see. So where is this person that I'm coaching today? Where do I want them to be in 6 months? That's balancing. Actionable means it's a co-production. I'm giving my person that I'm coaching something that they can do actionably that's going to help their own development, right? As managers, I think the trap a lot of people fall into, I'm guilty of this, I've been guilty of this, is that we take on everything ourselves.
Yeah,
we're the
enablers.
I was going to say we're can-do people, but enablers.
Yeah.
Right. So we want people to be engaged. We want to see evidence that you're asking people to do what you want them to do, to take part in their own development. It should be specific. You should talk about the impact that it has. It should be there should be continuity, right? We should look across coaching conversations over 3 months and 6 months and see Todd and I coming back to that same topic, right? Not just coaching to what I see Todd do today, but really be focused and thoughtful,
right,
about what we're working on.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, the last S is for supportive, right? I want to tie what I'm doing today with Todd, and I want to support his long-term growth. So my goals for Todd's development or Todd's goals for his development should tie to the long-term goals that Todd has for being part of my organization. And that's the qualitative piece as well.
And the great thing about that basics criteria is that it's been used across industries, right? So when Ed compares our written coaching quality to others in the industry and outside the industry, then he can start to say, hey, Biohaven and Baron Gringelheim, their coaches compared to others based on this criteria are, decile 1, 2, 3, or 4. Decile 4 is the best, right? Those are coaches who are, to Ed's point, consistently using basics within their coaching. They're balanced, they're actionable, they show impact, they're working on specific skills and behaviors, and they're very supportive for long-term and short-term development. So the best coaches do that consistently. And those best coaches, what we found at Biohaven when we looked at this analysis, also drove the most performance. It's not shocking to look at people who, and I always go back again to Nick Saban. He talks about the process, that process of focusing on skills, behaviors, and continually getting better, that kind of growth mindset type of work are the things that impact the scoreboard. I don't control if my drug's on formulary or not, or if somebody's going to buy my product. What I control is how professionally and what level of quality do my representatives or my salespeople or the people that I work for in manufacturing, impact the manufacturing process or the sales process. And I can only affect that through the skills and behaviors that we work on together.